It's a calm, cool Saturday morning. I figured it was time to do a little storytelling, but not the usual storytelling that I've been doing. It's time to talk a little bit about my fleet, and specifically Big Red over here, the soon-to-be retired Big Red. I've owned this truck since 2008. It is the longest tenured vehicle I have owned in terms of vehicle ownership. 2008 was like 16 years ago, so I've owned it a long time. I'm gonna tell the story of how I bought it, how I found it, and how all that went down. All of my vehicles have, somewhat of a unique story of how I got them. Well, this one doesn't quite. This one's story isn't quite as interesting as the other two, but both Big Red here and the Ram, which is known as Delmonica, they both have unique stories behind them, and I'm going to share those stories with y'all, starting with Big Red, of course. So, 2006 to 2008, I owned another truck, another Chevy. It was a 91 Cheyenne. It was called Great White, and I've talked about that in another video here recently. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it here, but it was, suffice it to say, it was not a very good truck. It had a lot of problems. I made a big mistake buying it, and I decided I needed to get out of it, and I needed to get something else, and I just had this feeling that, that truck had run its course, and it was time for something new and something better. So I started looking for another truck, and at the time, I was thinking, okay, I didn't know as much about these trucks as I do now, so I wasn't looking for exactly the specifics that I would be now if I was looking for another truck, but there was a couple things I was looking for. One, I was saying it has to be a 350, at least a 350 V8. It can't be the weak little 305, and it absolutely can't be a V6. I've never owned less than a V8 in my life, so I'm not going to downgrade and have a V6. And that statement is still true, by the way. I've never owned less than a V8. So I started looking, and I found this one. Another thing I was looking for, the doors had to be able to open. The doors could not sag and, close really slowly. And what I mean by that is this. Let me show you how this door opens up very gently. Closes. See? No sagging, no hanging, no having to slam the door, having to lift the door up from the outside and slam it. Screw that. That's what I had to deal with that white truck. So I said, these two things I'm looking for, and we're not going to buy a truck that doesn't have these two things. So started looking. I think it was, at the time, there wasn't, Car Gurus didn't exist. That website, Car Gurus, was not around. It was only Auto Trader and Cars.com. So I believe it was Auto Trader that I found this truck at. So it was at a used car dealership over near Fort Worth. I believe it was called Southwest Hyundai, but I might be mistaken about that. They are no longer around, so it doesn't matter. They went out of business. Obviously, I'm about to tell y'all why. But it was over there at Southwest Hyundai. It only had 118,000 miles, which I thought was really wild considering it was a 20-year-old truck. I thought, wow, that's not that many miles at all. I got a great life out of this. So, when looking at it, it was red. I'd never owned a red truck before. This was the first red truck I'd owned. So, at the time I wasn't really considering color at all. It was just, okay, I just need a 350 that doesn't have sagging doors and I'll be in good shape. So went out there to check it out and, test drove it and everything, and it was fine. It drove all right. When I went out there to buy it, I took this guy with me at the time who I grew up with, one of my childhood friends. His name, we'll call him Christopher. Now, Christopher is known for several things. One of them being obnoxious and, quite frankly, a jackass. Now, when normally you would think, oh, that's not a trait you'd want to have. However, in terms of vehicle negotiation, that's a skill you definitely want to have. So me and Christopher went out to look at this truck and test drove it and everything. Drove it around, checked all the fluids and everything. The transmission fluid was brown. That was the only thing that kind of threw me off. And I was like, brown transmission fluid. I don't know about this. That, and it was a 3/4 ton. It's actually I have it badged as a 1500 HD. There you can see those are emblems that I added. It actually is. It is what they call a light duty 3/4 ton, because if you look at the axles here. If you look at the axles, the number of lugs on there, there's only 6 lugs. There's only 6 lugs, the same lugs as are on Little Red here, the same exact wheels, to be honest. It's, back in the 80s and early 90s, GM kind of had this Frankenstein thing going on where they made multiple different trucks that were, they had made half tons, then they made a full 3/4 ton. They made a full 3/4 ton truck, which had 8 lug axles, and it had a heavy duty transmission, and it had the big block engine as an option. This truck, although it has the heavier suspension, you can see it has like 5 leaf springs down here. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the helper. There's a lot of leaf springs under here. So it has the heavy duty leaf springs, and it has a 14 bolt axle, whereas most of the half tons, all the half tons have 10 bolt axles. It has a 14 bolt rear end, which is insanely strong for a truck. It's like the 3/4 tons. However, it doesn't have a big block. It has the 350, and it has the light duty transmission. What's known as the 700 R4. So it's kind of this Franken truck in a sense. So that didn't really bother me. I wasn't necessarily concerned about that. The only thing that bothered me was the transmission fluid was brown. And, but it shifted fine, it drove fine, so whatever, I let it go. And we got in there to negotiate. This was one of those kind of slummy used car dealerships, as it were. This place was kind of a little bit on the shady side of things. So we get in there, they had it listed for $29,900, about $3,000. And we get in there at the negotiating table, and old Christopher starts spouting off. He goes, "Yeah, we'll give you $1,400 for this truck." And the sales guy he had this angry look on his face. He was offended. He goes, well, when y'all are serious, you come back and talk to me then. When you're serious, I'm not entertaining that offer. And Christopher goes, you've had this for like 6 months and no one's bought it. You've had this for a year and no one's bought it. And they started insulting him back and forth. I think he kind of cussed at us a little bit, and I think Christopher swore at him a little bit, and that was just something he was into. But finally, I was like, I looked at him, and I'm the one buying the truck, so I just looked at him. I said, "Look, you've had this truck for a long time, and nobody's bought it, and it's still here." And the guy claps back with, I've got 6 offers right now. I've got 6 people coming to buy it. I looked at him and said, "Then where are they?" And he stopped for a minute, and he just kind of was quiet. And he had this look on his face. I mean, just a simple question: where are they? Where's the other buyers? I'll be right back. He got up. "I'll be right back." He walked over around the corner. I guess he was talking to his manager, and I looked at Christopher, and we were just kind of like, "Hey, yeah, this clown's gonna try and negotiate now that he got caught." He's trying to bluster and, "I've got multiple buyers." No, you don't. I called about this truck 2 weeks ago, and you had it there. And then 2 weeks later, I come out and do a test drive on it, and it's still here. No one else wants this truck. So this guy comes back, well, listen, I can do 2,800. Christopher is like, "Nah, we're not doing no 2,800. And Christopher got up to get ready to leave, and the guy's like, "No, wait." And so we kind of went this back and forth. We kind of went with this back and forth, song and dance game for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, going back and forth on prices. Finally, we got it down to, we were up to 2,000, and he was up to 2,500 finally. So when finally he comes back to us and he goes, "Okay, Last option here. I will do 2,300 is the lowest we will go for this truck. And I thought about it for a few minutes, and I said, you got a deal, 2,300. So I paid $2,300 for this truck. And while I have put a lot of money into it over the years, a lot more than 2,300, it's made me, it's been the backbone of my business. And before that, it was a daily driver to work. And before that, it was a driver to and from school. My last few years in college, this truck has been with me for a lot of my life. It's had a lot of sentimental value. This truck was the truck that we drove away from our wedding in. We took this truck to our wedding venue and drove away from our wedding venue in it. The first time I told my wife that I loved her, we were sitting in this truck. It's been through a lot, and I still got a lot left to go, and that's why we're not getting rid of it. But the thing is, it's as old as me, being an 88 model, but manufactured in 87. It's as old as me, and it needs a little bit of rest. I need something a little bit newer that I can rely on in my day-to-day to do the daily grind. So this truck will be here still. It will just be receiving a reduced roll. So yeah, that's the basic overview of how I bought and how I found Big Red. And hope you all like that. And coming next, we'll have the story of the Ram. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit different, a little bit more interesting. But there's some shenanigans surrounding that truck as well. So, best of luck to everybody out there, and stay warm. I'm about to get productive here myself.